We're running a 490-inch big block Chevy in our 68 Camaro called Reloaded. And to handle a couple of the functions, we're utilizing a Vintage Air front runner front drive accessory system. And this is partially to hold the air conditioning compressor, but the other function is to provide a high quality serpentine front drive system. Now these cars never came with serpentine belts. And what we like about the Vintage Air unit, even with cars that were not running air conditioning, we like to run that front runner unit because it provides a rock solid truss that mounts to the front of the block and provides a real solid mount for the alternator and the steering pump and the AC compressor and an idler. So we're going to show you how that assembled on our 68. The first step to installing this system is to screw in the 4 supplied stainless steel studs into the water pump mounts on the front of the block. These have to be threaded in about 5 1/4 inches on a big block Chevy to make sure that there's enough room for that whole accessory truss. Because these bolts are stainless, it's important to put some anti-seize lubricant on each of the bolts so they don't gall, like into the water pump pulley or into any of the other fixtures. Next up is the installation of the sand den air conditioning compressor. In order to do this, you have to put a couple of adapters onto the compressor that are supplied, and then the compressor threads into the aluminum truss. Vintage Air supplies a ground wire that you need to attach as well. And then you can install the alternator, which slides onto the opposite side of the truss of the AC compressor. Next up, we used some RTV sealant on the gaskets for the water pump, and the water pump slides over those studs and seals against the block. Next, you slide some spacers between the block and the power steering bracket and slide the bracket onto the studs. Next, we wrap some Teflon tape on the supplied stainless steel water pump outlet and threaded it into place, pointing up towards the intake manifold. And from there, the whole truss assembly slides onto the studs.
Sweet.
Vintage Air supplies really high quality ARP 12-point stainless fasteners, which make sure that that truss is fully seated against the block, which also seals the water pump. The tensioner makes sure the belt will be tight at all times, and it attaches next. Our Vintage Air truss came hard-coated in a black coating. They sell these in a natural aluminum or a polished version, but we wanted everything to be blacked out under the hood. So we painted the Stewart water pump black to match, and we also painted our harmonic balancer. And before we installed the balancer pulley, we ran a tap through just to make sure those holes were all cleaned out. Then another dab of ARP Ultra Torque on the crankshaft bolt, and the pulley retainer gets bolted to the crankshaft. You have to install the power steering pulley onto the pump, and then that pump can bolt to the bracket. At this point, you can install the serpentine belt, and the only remaining steps are to add the decorative covers. There's one that goes over the AC compressor, and one that will eventually go over that belt tensioner system. And then you've got a rock-solid, reliable serpentine drive system that won't throw the belt at high RPM. And of course, the side benefit is the car now has air conditioning too.